you may see behind me here, when we go to be tilling farms, then they can be really, really huge. Now, in the state of Texas, clear cuts and forestry can only be 40 acres at one time. That's not true of tilling or land clearing for agriculture. So if you'll see behind me here, that has been tilled as far as you can see, and pretty much as far as you can see that way, and about as far as you, well, out to the tree line over there, which is about 300 yards away out there. Now, one of the things we want to talk about here is how we do tilling, if we're going to till at all. One of the very common mistakes that's made in tilling is contour, right? So a lot of these huge tractors, huge plowing machines, they're really kind of awkward to deal with. So they don't want to turn them around much. So it's much easier to just drive them downhill and turn them around at the bottom and drive them back uphill. So that's what you see here. That is uphill. And as you can see, the rows, hopefully you can see that the tractor went straight uphill that way. Now when it rains, obviously this is holding a lot of water, and I'll talk about that in just a second. When it rains, all of the water is going to go down the rows, right? And off it goes that way. And you can see down there by the tree line where they turn the tractor around. But that's not the best way to do it. So water gets in the little ditches that are created by the tilling. Hopefully I can do this without getting too muddy. As you can see right there, where water has settled, and I've got the tops of them are dry, crumbly, and gonna blow away. And then water sits in the bottom and will flow. And you can actually see that right there, where water started to flow down it and flow out through it. And now we have topsoil loss from erosion, water erosion, okay? Really, it should go the other way. It should go against the slope. So it's called plowing on contour, or plowing against the slope, or perpendicular to the slope, so that when it rains, water doesn't run down the little ditches that are created by the tilling and pick up speed that, we talked about as momentum of the speed of water increases and erosion increases. It doesn't pick up speed, it doesn't pick up soil, it doesn't run off into a creek somewhere. What it does is it blocks the water flow and stops it from picking up speed, and the water, instead of running downhill this way, it hits these little channels and stops and starts to percolate down into the soil. That's increasing our groundwater recharge. It's decreasing our soil loss from erosion. It's decreasing the amount of nutrients that are lost from that topsoil being lost. And so it's a much better practice. If you're going to do tilling, then that is a far better practice to keep water on site, so we don't have to keep spraying and irrigating. And we can save on fertilizer and things because we're losing less of our topsoil. You might be asking, why does it run off at all? So here, look at my footprints. So this is pretty soft stuff that I'm going around in because it's been tilled. So you might ask yourself, and I've driven past several, and I'll try to get a few more on camera, but why does the water run off at all? If it's been tilled, and even if it was tilled correctly, then why is the water hitting this loosened soil and running off into this creek anyway? Wouldn't it just soak down into the ground? Well, no, because of what's called a hard pan, which means as we drive heavy machinery over this land over and over and over and over again, even if you're tilling it, you're only tilling up the top 6 or 8 inches or so, maybe down a foot. But below that, it's still being compacted a little bit at a time by the giant tractors, okay? Harvesters and all these other machines. So one of the ways that we can improve our groundwater recharge, how much groundwater we get back when it rains, and also reduce the amount of runoff that happens off these fields, is to stop that hard pan from forming. Because it's like loose dirt and then a layer of hard dirt underneath it. That causes all sorts of problems. Now, we can reduce that by not driving machines over it all the time. And then you're going to think, well, wait a minute. I've got to plant. How am I going to plant? Can't plant by hand. Farm's too big for that. This is the factory farming world now. So how am I going to do it? We gotta have the seeder attachment to the tractor. We need a huge tractor, right? Then we got to spray stuff. Then we got to spray herbicide. Then we got to spray pesticide. And then we got to do all sort of other junk. Then we got to have a harvester, all this other stuff. How are we going to do all that if we're not going to drive giant machines over it? And the answer is UAVs and drones, robots. That's how we're going to do it. They're a fraction of the weight. They're smart objects. A lot of times they're totally autonomous and solar powered. It's brilliant work. It's the future of agriculture. Do things have to be tilled at all, you might ask? The answer is no, they don't. That's your assignment with this video, is you're going to look up principles of no-till agriculture and a product or machine that goes with a tractor called a no-till drill, and figure out how that works. And you'll see how states that don't allow tilling, disking and disc tilling, how they still provide food for their citizens using no-till agriculture. I'm trespassing in a field near a Buc-ee's, and the reason why is because I have found the monoculture that I wanted to tell you about. So, this is corn. There's a lot of reasons I know that it's corn, largely because it's sitting here. There's loads of it. Now, all the far that you can see that way, and this is actually a relatively small farm, but everything out here, as far as you can see off that way, everything else, as far as you can see off that way, that's all corn. And it's all going to be this product right here. This is an industrial corn. This is not an ancestral corn at all. This is a genetically modified product made to grow in these cities of corn, these packed together, crammed together cities of corn. Now you can see here that the plant was completely sheared off and most of it removed. This is just the root part, and it's been tilled under, and you can see the till lines here. Now, lots of things just don't make it. You can see by the bones out here. Things get run over, things die, things get tilled in, living things, right? And a lot of this is just sort of waste. Now, this is a monoculture, and a monoculture is where we've only got one type of crop growing, and I'm in it. I've been walking around with you, and we're going to walk further still into this monoculture. What I'm crossing right here is some huge tracks. You see these massive tractor tracks. It kind of goes along with what I've been saying. Why do these monocultures exist? Well, there's lots of reasons. This monoculture exists because the government pays for it. There's a direct payment on corn. Corn, you will actually lose money growing an acre of corn. You can't sell it for what it costs you to grow it and what the land cost you, okay? So growing corn from a purely economic standpoint, from supply and demand, is absolutely pointless because the market is saturated. It's the cheapest thing in the world because there's corn grown all over the place. We got way too much corn. So supply and demand, the price is down through the bottom. So why is the government paying for that? Well, that's its own can of worms. It's used for corn sweetener, it's used for corn fillers and all sort of packaged goods. It's used for fuel, and it's used to do ethanol, which using corn to do ethanol is the least efficient way to make ethanol. There's all sorts of backwards reasons about corn, and my personal opinion is the corn subsidy should be ended. But monocultures partially exist because of the giant machines, the giant machines that get these farms bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and because of direct payments on certain crops. So of course the farmer's gonna grow that crop and get paid by the government regardless of whether or not that crop is actually valuable enough to be grown. Okay, so that's part of it. And part of it is just for a lack, or what seems to have been a lack of any other options, okay? So if you need more food, you need more fuel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How do you make more? Well, you get a bigger tractor, you plant one thing, and you plant it for miles, miles and miles and miles, and then we farm that, we harvest that and sell it, and that's that, right? And the only way to get more, do better, is just more chemicals, bigger tractors, etc. Well, that doesn't have to be that way. Now there are options. There's urban farming, there's vertical farming, there's indoor farming, there's artificial sunlight, there's UAVs, there's robots, there's all sorts of things that we can do in agriculture that isn't this green revolution holdover of giant monocrop or monoculture farms that are done with typical plowing. The problem with agriculture today is it really hasn't changed much since the 40s. It's just gotten bigger. That's it.